I'm Max Hanlon. I'm a theologian who loves art.
I'm Tessa Davidson. I'm an artist who loves theology.
And this is Our First Word.
Theology of Beauty.
Roger Scruton says, kitsch is designed to put emotion on sale. It works as advertisements work, creating a fantasy world in which everything, love included, can be purchased, and in which every emotion is simply one item in an infinite line of substitutes. The cliched kiss, the doe-eyed smile, the Christmas card sentiments all advertise what cannot be advertised without ceasing to be. They commit the salesman to nothing. They can be bought and sold without emotional hardship, since the emotion, being a fantasy product, no longer exists in its committed form. I think this relates to some of what we were talking about with mechanical reproduction and the nature of kitsch. There's no sacrifice. There's only commodification. Do you think Scruton is right about this?
With kitsch? Yeah, I think that's a characteristic that really defines how we differentiate between kitsch and beautiful art and authentic, creations.
So the guy who writes the cliched Christmas card sentiment, wishing you warm feelings or warm affection and fond memories this Christmas, whatever, right? The saccharine card. Is it possible he felt it when he wrote it? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine, right? This is a guy who writes greeting cards for a living, and he's supposed to write what will sell.
Yeah.
But then again, if we're only I guess I want to hear you talk about this. I don't want something that's commercialized and designed just to sell and or just to be useful to click some, task box for somebody. Yeah. That doesn't sound like what beauty is for. But also, it does seem like you got to be pragmatic, right? Yeah, I mean, the Sistine Chapel is what the Sistine Chapel is because the building was there and they're like, hey, Michelangelo, paint this ceiling. These are the dimensions. Your piece has to be this size and, it has to be these themes. But like there's all sort of pragmatic things that go into it. Yeah. Also, we should find a better example than Michelangelo because I feel like we overdo it with him. It's probably because my lack of knowledge about better art, or other art. Anyway, my point is, what's the relationship between pragmatism, including pragmatism about finances?
Yeah.
Right? And striving for authenticity or beauty or the kind of originality that we think of as just arising when the muse whispers in your ear.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. And it's something that is a question that a lot of artists are grappling with in the 20th century, because as we see the rise of consumerism becomes the waters in which we swim. And we don't even realize how much it has affected every single aspect of our life, how we look at things for how they can be useful to us. And so as a result, we create things that really pander to the taste of those, instant gratification and how we can just kind of move from thing to thing to thing and just grab the bits that we want. And so this is how consumerism works, and it's affecting our tastes, where we're kind of dulling our senses to where we do not want more of challenging works to have to grapple with and live with and sit with and try to contemplate over longer periods of time. And instead, we just want that quick, almost stimulation, because that's what sells to the broadest group of people and most amount of people all at one time. And so there's a danger with that approach and how consumerism affecting the arts when it comes to kitsch, and even a pragmatic approach with how can we sell the most and make the biggest kind of imprint.
Yeah, I think about this is just a human phenomenon. We want to hear what we've already heard. We want to look at art that we've already seen and decided we like.
Yeah.
Think about one of the critiques I have sometimes as a minister in a church is people come to church and what they think a good sermon is one that says what they already thought and knew the whole time, and just sort of that person's job is to express authoritatively what I already feel and think, kind of maybe subliminally or unconsciously, and that's what they like. He said what I like, or right? She in her class she was talking and she said the thing that I already think, and so she's good.
Right.
And art seems like that too sometimes. Oh, I've seen like Van Gogh to me is interesting, and I think he's impressive, but I really don't get very excited about Van Gogh because he's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't think these people even really like Van Gogh. they just sort of know that they're supposed to like him. He's familiar, so he doesn't feel startling or intimidating, or they don't have to feel inadequate in the face of him. They can say, "Oh yeah, I know what that is."
Yeah.
And so everyone goes to the Van Gogh, immersive experience or the Monet immersive experience. But I liked that. I went to it. I thought it was cool. I liked it. But I was like, I don't know. Maybe this is just snobbery. I was like, I don't know. Y'all really like Van Gogh.
Well, they definitely, if you look at the statistics, like back in 1888, nobody liked Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Nobody was buying his paintings. And so it definitely points to these cultural trends and how much that affects our tastes and what we gravitate toward.
So one of the things that I think Scruton and others that I've read talk about is how modern art, with its combative tone, right? I'm doing something that's intentionally transgressive precisely because I don't want you to think that I'm just producing kitsch. I'm not doing this to be marketed or sold or consumeristic. I'm doing this for art's sake, man.
Right.
And then maybe people push back, but to me, then all modern art becomes the same stuff, but it's not even pretty often, it's like, oh, this is also now kitsch.
Yeah.
Oh, a weird, oversized abstract sculpture in a public place,
right,
in front of a corporate building.
Yeah, you're really touching on a problem that arose. If you look at the early theorists and writers and art critics, people like Clement Greenberg, who was arguing for modern art because to respond to kitsch. And that is directly how we see modern art being born out of a response against kitsch. And then when it started becoming popular and trendy, then it was like, oh snap, what do we do? Now this is kitsch. And so you're right to identify that is something that we see. Yeah.
Like if you go into, this is a unsettling phenomenon for me, to walk into a furniture store, right? Or like Pier 1 or Pottery Barn, whatever, right? They'll have art on the walls for sale. And if I look at any one piece in there, I might be interested. But I notice these are all abstract pieces. And they're all muted colors. And they're all designed to look like, oh, man, what an interesting arrangement. But it's not a picture of anything. That would call too much attention to it. Then we would have to think, is it good or not? And I think with this abstract art that becomes kitschy, because nobody feels adequate to say why that might be beautiful or not beautiful, right? If I have a picture of somebody and I think, oh wait, they didn't quite get the hands done right, they look boxy, or they didn't know the face seems like they missed the symmetry, or the proportions are off in the form, then I know how to criticize that. Or I look at these 17th century paintings of horses, which is, they always have these horses in photos. And I think that horse's legs are too skinny. That horse would fall. It couldn't support its weight. Because I've seen horses are apparently real hard to do, hard to draw and such. But an abstract piece, what's there to critique? I don't have anything to compare it to. And so it becomes this safe way to make art that will sell.
Especially when we don't have the training. I think when it comes to non-objective abstract art, there are the principles of design at work. You can have harmony and rhythm and balance. You can have all of those elements, just like, a lady making a bouquet of flowers. You have to think about the arrangement, the colors, all of that. But
or a man making a bouquet of flowers.
Okay, sorry. I was just giving an example of
really
somebody I just talked to.
Here.
All right. For all of the men out there, actually, I've had, many male students that enjoy that. But all of those things can be applied to abstract art. And you see, with a lot of the early movements, that they were very, very thoughtful about those kinds of things. And the same could be said with architecture. You have a lot of architects like Louis Sullivan, who is thinking about the form, but recognizing how it needs to follow the function. And so he designed beautiful buildings that had aesthetic sensitivities that followed their function, and puts out these kind of blocky works of architecture are really the invention of modern architecture. You have modern artists that are being sensitive to the forms, but put out more simplistic kind of images. And then people without those aesthetic sensitivities, without that training and design, then grab a hold of it. And now it just, people don't see any talent in abstract art, or, you know, and then we have like these really, really terrible modern works of architecture that are just concrete slabs. And we have like really terrible, kitschy abstract art. And so, yeah, that is all a product of that lack of, I think, aesthetic training and sensitivities, and also just caught up with their ability to market that stuff quickly, get up those buildings very quickly, you know, throw together this abstract piece quickly. So it all actually does, I think, tie back to consumerism.
And also, marketing. I mean, I want to go back to this point you were making earlier about modern art being born as a reaction against kitsch, and then it becomes kitsch itself too.
Yeah.
That it like, for example, one of the things I see is like, oh, we'll go shallow. We're not going to pretend that there's some deep depth or meaning here because there's no such thing as meaning or depth. We're not going to pretend that this art tells the truth. There is no truth, and it's sort of a nihilistic impulse that shows up, I think, in some of these things too. It's the art is merely transgressive.
Yeah.
Merely deconstructionist. No longer aiming at beauty, because we've rejected that notion as well.
Yeah.
Art becomes it's like literature suffers the same sort of fate, right, in many ways. And that is, art becomes merely political expression. It's merely an expression of power or the rejection of power, like how Foucault would talk about these sort of things. Everything is always the unmasking and rejection of somebody else's prior power move or power play. And so art ceases to be about beauty.
Yeah.
It becomes about this other thing. And I don't mean to imply that like art shouldn't or can't or it's not appropriate for it to make political statements. It certainly can and should and does. But it ought to do so as art, as something aiming at beauty.
Yeah. And
it seems to me.
And this kind of gets back to the Walter Benjamin, piece, because he recognized things have changed because of mechanical reproductions. And he saw it as a good thing that art can be political, because that's then the next host for art is just for it to be political, and that's how it's. And that's really, he kind of predicted that, and that's what we see take over. But even to this day, it's not. There are some that are still working in the vein of kind of that early heroic modern notion of saying, well, abstract art can have meaning, but it means in a different way. It means in color relationships. It means in speaking the language of visual beauty. And so I think there's still that lingers, for a lot of artists, which draws them to be making the thing. But yeah, unfortunately, that has been blocked out by political agendas and other things that have taken over the art world.
Okay, I want to ask you this question.
Okay.
We know that with mechanical reproduction, with sentimentality, with consumerism, we know that art can devolve down into kitsch.
Yeah.
And that, like in architecture, you're saying utilitarian concerns override. I may have said this on here before, but like the experience of driving from Searcy to Little Rock here in Arkansas, if you start doing the work of like looking at the boxes, you just as you're driving along, just look at boxes and just see it's just boxes everywhere. Oh, there's a box with a false front on it. Oh, there's a box they stuck a triangle on top, but it's all just boxes all the way down, and there's just no creativity. But they're real cheap to put up, and they're all these aluminum buildings because it's cheap, and we just don't have any money in this state, and so forth and so on. Okay, so we can be critical of all these human endeavors in this way.
Yeah.
All right, here's a question. Can natural beauty become kitsch? like mountains, seasides, sunsets, the Grand Canyon.
Well, those things, it's hard to reproduce as humans to manufacture them. I mean, I guess...
Like, is this a case where if we want to explore beauty, one answer is let's turn from art and human-produced beauty to natural beauty because it's not reproducible, because it's not, you can't, like if you want to see the Grand Canyon, you got to go to the Grand Canyon. You can't just experience it in your room.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I've never really pondered it like that, because when you look at nature, God has baked in an anti-kitsch, almost like approach to creation. When you think about all of the variety of trees and all of the varieties of landscapes, you travel anywhere and it looks completely different. And not only geographically do you travel to different regions that have different rocks and formations and plant life, but also every time of the day is changing. Every season is changing. You constantly experience these places in new ways. And so I feel like kitsch is just trying to like lean into one like sweet thing and just hit you again and again. Like, here's the desire button. We want this. Now hit it again and hit it again in the same way. And like, just keep that appetite going for that one thing. Whereas, I don't know, I think I would. And what do you think about this? Like this built-in anti-kitsch, or do you think sometimes we try to harness nature to make it kitschy, where we only talk about beauty in terms of flowers, or we only talk about beauty in forms of the Ross, like the Bob Ross mountain? Do you think that there's a way in which we're trying to?
I think that's like my first instinct on this is to say, oh man, people even manage to turn nature into kitsch.
Okay.
Because what are the destination sites, and it becomes, it's like the phenomenon of going to a national park and being overwhelmed by human beings there, everyone taking a picture of the same thing, such that the nature is almost messed up or reinterpreted because of the human element that surrounds it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty problematic. Like for example, I was at Yosemite this summer, and it was so awesome. But people taking pictures of El Capitan, that famous rock formation there, reminded me in a lot of ways of people taking pictures of the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. And it drove me crazy. It's like, oh, I'm here to get a selfie with this famous piece of art behind me.
Oh, okay.
But I also think your point about you had to go there. You can't, like, you can have a print of the Mona Lisa that's exactly the same as the Mona Lisa hanging on your wall, but you can't have El Capitan in your backyard.
Right.
You got to go to Yosemite for that. It is the one of a kindness.
Yeah.
So I remember I was talking about even just like this whole class and this discussion, this podcast about beauty. I was talking to my wife about it, and she keeps saying, I was like, well, it's, Tessa and I are doing this, and she's an artist, and I'm interested in art, and so we're talking about all this stuff, and I kept talking about art, and she kept saying, if you're talking class, the class is about beauty. It's about beauty and God. You need to be talking more about natural beauty than about art. That should be the dominant conversation. And I've been thinking about that. Why is that? Now maybe Jenny just loves the outdoors, and so she likes natural art better. But I also think that one of the things that's right about that instinct is to say art is more subject to, let's say, the brokenness of human beings.
Yeah.
We can mess art up faster than we can mess up natural beauty. Because, like you're saying, there's a force, whether you want to call it nature or providence or God's handiwork and creation, right? There's somebody else working in natural beauty that's not just a fallen human.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that like nature is always just perfect and beautiful, right? I mean, bugs do cool things and change the natural environment just like we do. I don't want to reject human creations of beauty, but be like, oh, but what the ants do is great. No, we're both creatures. We're both manipulating our environment. We both produce things that are, now we do it intentionally to produce beauty.
Right.
The ant, I think, does it without knowing it, and then we go, oh, look, it was beautiful regardless, like honeycomb, I think is really beautiful, like the symmetry and all of honeycomb.
Well, that's still all within God's providence.
And,
like how God creates these creatures and wills all of them into being, and that's still all within.
And he does that for us too, right? So there's like I want to push back some on this instance that says human art, human created beauty, not real beauty. This is lesser than natural beauty. But I also think this, your point a second ago, natural beauty is less susceptible because it can't be reproduced, at least not as effectively, mechanically.
Yeah, and it's harder to package and sell it. I see what you mean as far as like the selfies and stuff like that, but it is difficult to look at the stars and to try to package that up. And you get a glimpse at the end of Job when God is talking to Job and saying, look at creation and look at how I am moving through creation and how my glory is revealed in creation. And again and again, especially throughout the Psalms and throughout all of Scripture, you continually see these appeals to the beauty of God and the glory of God as evident in creation. I think we are good to look there first, and in order to be blown away and captivated by the God of beauty who is sovereign over all of creation, and we are just humble little grasshoppers, just like looking up. And so I think that humility that we gain from looking and just pondering the beauty of God in creation is a good place to start. And we recognize the fallenness that exists within our own created works. But
you talk about, like, say, even some of the natural beauties that you're naming, like the stars. Well, the stars are a great example of, at present, we're doing nothing to affect them. Maybe we're putting up pollution and things to obscure our view, but we're not manipulating the stars at all.
Yeah, that's all.
But a garden is this, harmony between the two. Or I think about the way that, like, there's a scene, I think it's in Sense and Sensibility, a Jane Austen scene, where the man is saying, I know you won't like this, but I like trees that grow straight and make for good lumber. And you want one that's, twisted by the wind and grows wild. But he's naming not just I like trees because I can turn them into lumber and build something with them and make money. He's saying, I think there's beauty in this usefulness. Yeah. And she wants the wild, chaotic sort of thing. This is, romanticism and all these kind of different trends at war with each other. But it also seems to me that there's something like beautiful in like a honeycomb, this rigid, geometric, kind of thing. And then also about, windswept trees. When you're out west, the trees that all grow weird because the wind keeps blowing them. Yeah. Or the lines in sand dunes, or in the desert where it's just the chaos of the wind blowing over them, making new shapes and all. And there's something powerful about the lack of human control. That's just the reception. And without beauty, like doing that work of creating distance. Yeah. We can't make or change or manipulate that. And there's something right about that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it reminds me of like Nietzsche's categories between the Dionysian, and the Apollonian, where the Dionysian is more of the irrational and overwhelming, like the sense of the sublime, where something overpowers us. Whereas, the Apollonian approach is more of that which is orderly and rational. And you can see beauty on both sides of that. And I know Kant wanted to create the category of the sublime and differentiate that from the beautiful, and there were some things I think that were taken away from beauty with that move, and it became more secular and that kind of thing. But I'm glad that you point to both of those sides of beauty, both the irrational and the rational approach, and you see that both in nature and in creative works. When
you think about mechanical reproduction, one of the things that gives us is abundance. Right.
That's true.
We've got a ton of this. It's not hard. You want a picture of this? We can make it, right? We can produce things. Yeah. And over. So we have more and more and more of them, and abundance feels like a good thing. But it also seems like the mechanical reproduction is a pushback on something that we talked about last time with originality.
Right.
Right. And so I want to hear you talk a little bit about this. Scarcity and abundance. And because on the one hand, I want to think like nature, the beauty in nature is abundant and super abundant. That great line from Gerard Manley Hopkins, for all this, nature is never spent. Right? There's so much abundance, and we tend to imagine there's not or whatever, and we can have this mindset of scarcity when it actually is out there. But then it also seems like there's a sense in which recognizing this is the one thing, there's not another like this individuality is part of where the value and part of what makes something beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because we see both at the same time in nature, where you can pick up an individual leaf and there's no other leaf like that. It's got its own unique qualities, and every single person has their own voice and fingerprints. And so nature is full of abundance, but we also have those individual, like, unique qualities. So you have originality and abundance at the same time, and that's what's lost, I think, in mechanical reproduction. And I know there's a place for that. So
that's really good though. Like let's not rush past that thing you just said. There is an abundance and an originality.
Yeah.
There is a permanence to nature. You always got to have this.
Yeah.
But also an elusiveness. It was just for that moment you had to be there kind of thing. And that's not, I think you're right. That's not there in mechanical reproductions.
Yeah, and I think we need to, and again, this is what Warhol was trying to point out in his work, is recognizing what is lost, and that originality and those unique qualities of what makes the thing, or the human being. And we're kind of creating a false idol, the false reality, when we push out things that don't have those unique qualities. But yeah, I don't know. I say that, and I'm not mechanical, like things that are manufactured, they serve us well. And I think there's a place for that when it comes to human creation. But as far as how we reflect on our world and what we surround ourselves with, there's something lost when we only surround ourselves with things that make us feel more like a mechanism.
Yeah, this is one of the things we touched on last time that we're hitting again, and that is, it's pretty cool to me that I can have a print of something that I can't, that's across the ocean. That's pretty cool that I can have that. I think that's a good thing. I like that I can, find this out the same way that, like, I can't see Christ walk on the water. So I'm pretty glad I've got a book that tells me about it,
right.
And an imagination that can kind of make that happen and so forth. But also, if we lean too hard into this, the making of everything available everywhere all the time, we lose part of what it is to be human, to be in a story that God has placed us at a certain place in a certain time.
Yeah.
And this, like, the nature of beauty as that which you receive as gift. That goes to that kind of superabundance thing. There's something gift-like about nature, about beauty rather, something gift-like about beauty that comes to us. And the minute we say, I don't want it to be a gift, I want it to be on offer all the time whenever I want, we mess it up. It's like that Disney cartoon with Donald Duck where his nephews say, we wish it were Christmas every day, and they wish it on the wishing star. And then they wake up the next morning, it's like Groundhog's Day, but it's Christmas every day.
Yeah.
And it ruins Christmas. And there's something like that about beauty. That it's you had to be there. This was a gift for this moment. There'll be other gifts. There's always going to be a gift, but there's always going to be beauty. But this thing is for this moment, this time and place.
Yeah, that fittingness and that relationship to a larger story and a larger context. I'm reminded of the first time I saw Jurassic Park, and there was those intense moments that everybody loved about that film, where you had like,
the little
water
and
like it's coming around the corner. And there was just a few of those moments in that movie, but that's what like drew all the crowds and what made that film so powerful. And then I think about it's how, people looked at that through a consumer model and thought, what were the parts everybody liked? Let's extract that from the context of that. Let's try to harness and gain as much economic value that we can from those scenes, which we see all the time in like TikTok, like all of these like short form types of content. Let's extract that, and then let's put them all together in these like later versions of Jurassic Park, like boom, 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 like every 5 minutes, it's just jumping to those intense scenes. It's like, let's hit that button again. Let's hit it again, hit it again. This is what we see with pornography. This like let's take all those sugary parts. But you're right, like beauty needs to be contextualized in a whole, where you have those moments, but let's not try to scrape that off the top and then just try to like harness that for our own consumer desires.
Yeah, it's to me the right way to make a cake is all about the ratio of cake to icing.
That's good. Yeah.
Right? And just like to have a big spoonful of icing, ugh.
This is what's happening with kitsch.
And that's what happens with this.
Yeah.
Beauty is this unbelievable good, but like all good gifts, it can go wrong. And it goes wrong in lots of ways. And for the next few episodes, we want to explore some of the ways that beauty can go wrong. One is by losing its originality and becoming something like kitsch. And another is vanity, a focus on the mere veneer of beauty. And a third one is pornography. And I think what all three of these have in common is we reduce beauty to merely the pleasure we get from beauty. We abstract it from the thing itself and merely try and have its rewards. And I think that's the case in all three of these in different forms. And so we're going to explore these over the next few episodes as we head toward the end of our discussion. If we're naming something about God, we also want to say this: we're not God. God's going to work through us and reveal things to us, and then we're going to take that thing and mess it up. That's what it is to be fallen humans. So I'm excited about these conversations we're going to have. Okay, Tessa, so all of this has been about how beauty goes wrong. And one of the things I'm hearing us say, both in the previous episode and in this one, is one way beauty goes wrong is when we abstract it from originality, from time and place. When we turn it into kitsch, this tacky, consumeristic, utilitarian thing, and we say, that's all we want. Mm-hmm. You've said we just keep pushing that button. It makes me think of like somebody playing a slot machine. Mm-hmm. A slot machine has the illusion of a game, and you don't play because you're especially good at pulling the lever or pushing the button. You play because you want the bells to go off and you want the money to come. Mm-hmm. And that's very different than like the beauty of sport or game, where it's complexity and skill and a beautiful performance. There's no such thing as a beautiful pull on a slot machine lever, the way that there is a beautiful pass in a football game or something. What do you say is maybe like a final word about how beauty goes wrong when we turn it into merely the reward, the emotional reward we get from kitsch?
Yeah. Well, I think when we think about beauty being located in a context, in a situation, in a grander story, I think we need to be cautious about removing away the rough parts or the painful parts, because that is what is creating the tension and sometimes the contrast there. And this is the way in which God communicates with us, and the way in which our life works out, and the drama of the story of humanity is that we see that there's suffering and painful areas, but then also those areas are redeemed. And so I think in a small kind of microcosm sense, whenever we encounter beauty, we have to encounter the totality of the thing, which is, and to be truthful and honest about the context of the thing. And so anytime you kind of divorce beauty from its siblings when it comes to truth and goodness, then I think we'll see beauty going wrong. And so I think therein lies the issues with kitsch and with vanity and mechanical reproduction, is that sometimes you have that divorcing of truth and goodness.
Yeah, and that seems right to me, precisely because, and I know this sounds just like of course a theologian would say that, but it's because we're trying to separate beauty from God. It's like asking for God's grace without asking for God himself. Mm-hmm. And once we say that beauty is divorced from God, of course it's going to go wrong. Once we say, I can reach out and grasp the fruit without receiving it as gift from the one who plants the tree. Yeah. This is our story, and we're always doing this. And so what we want to do is look to Christ, who empties himself and receives that which the Father has to give him, and thereby finds grace and truth. And I think it's in that openness to reception to say, I can't hold on to this. I can't hang on to my experience of the David or the sunset or whatever by capturing it in a photo or buying a little miniature statue of it. These things are tawdry, and they're mere tokens or totems to remind me of it. And their magic is not going to work to bring it back. We've got to just say, I guess I'll trust God to show me another beauty. He'll reveal himself in some other way rather than me capturing it and producing it and having it as my own. Chucky!